This is the Chamber Link, connecting community, creating impact with Tyler Fischbach.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the show. It's a beautiful summer day in Fargo, North Dakota. It's a great day to be alive, so thanks for tuning in today. We have a big conversation today and three big-time guests. I'm very excited to dive into the future of the Fargo Convention Center. And we have none other with us than Charley Johnson, the president and CEO of the FMCVB, also known as Visit Fargo-Moorhead. We have Kent Kolstad, president of Livewire, and we have Mrs. Shannon, president and CEO of the Fargo-Moorhead West Fargo Chamber of Commerce. And so these three are going to bring in very, very different but diverse and interesting perspectives about the future of this convention center. I'm very excited about that. And as I was thinking about this conversation, I thought about the first time that I really had any sort of interaction with the convention center. And this was probably about 8 years ago. So there's an association for chambers of commerce. It's called the Association for Chamber of Commerce Executives. Did I get that right, Shannon? ACCE?
Yep.
And they do tons of things. It's knowledge sharing, connecting team members, lots of resources. It's endless. It's a great resource that our team uses often. I use it. But one thing that they do is every year they have a major conference around the U.S., and it's a different state, different city every year. And the first time that I went to the ACCE conference was in Des Moines. I'd never been to Des Moines before. I didn't really know what to expect. And so we drove down there. A handful of chamber employees drove down. This was probably 2018. And first of all, when we got into Des Moines, I was pretty shocked at how cool the downtown was. I was not expecting that. There was community art everywhere. We got beverages downtown, dinner, and I was pretty surprised by what the kids would call bougie downtown Des Moines is. And the conference didn't start until that next day, and we were at the convention center. And so we had the big kickoff event in there, and I was kind of shocked. I was like, I've never experienced a convention center like this before in a city. I mean, we had a huge ballroom, breakout rooms, places to eat, and all in all, it added up to this really cool experience that I was not expecting in Des Moines. And so I think that's maybe a lead-in of we're gonna get into all sorts of details today. But personally, I walked away with a whole new perspective on that city. And I think that's going to be maybe a sliver of the conversation. But anyway, I just wanted to share that. That was my first, big time event. And I really saw the power of having something like that in a city. And so, Charley, I'm really curious from your perspective, because you've been with the CVB for some time and you've been leading this effort now for some time. Can you give our listeners a little bit of history of how did this conversation first come to be for our own region, for a convention center? What was the why, and when did that kind of get started?
I started at Visit Fargo-Moorhead in June of 2012. I just had my 13th anniversary, which will be my last anniversary, due to retirement impending. But I think we started talking about this within a year of the time I was there. And in all truth, it was first brought to my attention by Rob Sobolik, GM of the Fargo Dome. They had a plan at the time. There had been a plan to build a basketball wing onto the Fargo Dome. This was before they decided to renovate the old Bison Sports Arena, which became the Shack. So he showed me that they had this footprint drawn up for basketball, and since that wasn't going to happen, they decided to do the Shack instead. He said, maybe he and the Dome Authority had talked about maybe turning that into convention space. So we talked about that for a while, and they hired someone and did a study, hired HVS to do a study of the feasibility of that. So that was the first study, was done 2013, 2014. A little-known entrepreneur at the time by the name of Doug Burgum came to the Fargo Dome Authority meeting as they were getting ready to hire HVS, a company called HVS, to do the study, and pleaded with them, I think that's not an unfair statement, to also have them look at the possibility of building it downtown. So the study did that first study did that. It was not very specific about downtown because there was no place. Mm-hmm. There was no location for it. But they did a generic downtown thing. So that was the first time we started talking about that. And, I sort of feel like that kind of stalled the situation. I think that got in the way of the Fargo Dome proceeding with that. They might have found a way to fund it, but then the debate became about where it should go. And a few years later, fast forward a few years later, by the way, by this time I had recognized pretty early on that we needed more convention space. We obviously couldn't host any number of different events, largely because we didn't have any place that had both ballroom space and exhibit space. Those are the two. You need three things. You need ballroom space, exhibit space of equal amounts, pretty much, or actually sometimes mostly more exhibit space, depending on how many people are there. And then you need breakout room space, so smaller meeting space, plus of course pre-function and kitchen and storage and all of that stuff, which Kent knows all about. So it had become pretty clear to me that we couldn't really host anything that had a large exhibit space requirement. We started noticing right away that we couldn't even host the North Dakota Association of Counties, the North Dakota League of Cities, had too much exhibit space for us to host them. We could have worked them into the Fargo Dome, but they were reluctant to go there. There was not an attached hotel. They didn't feel like it was the location they wanted to be in those cases, so we still haven't been able to get them here. So it was pretty clear that we needed space, and I didn't have any trouble getting behind the need for that. In fact, Vince Lindstrom started talking about that like in 1985 when he was the first head of the Fargo-Moorhead Convention and Visitors Bureau. So this is it's not a new discovery that I made. We've been after it for a long time. So then a few years later, to try to push the thing forward, our board and the Fargo Dome Authority agreed, after Rob and I asked them to do update the study and include some other sample locations. So we hired HVS again and an architect friend of theirs to come in and look at the Fargo Dome again. Again, we had to come up with a hypothetical downtown. We had to pretend that the Mass Transit Center, the bus depot area, which also houses some other city offices, might be available. So that was the one they picked because they had already built City Hall, where, I'm retiring soon, so I can say what I think. They had already built the new city, or decided to build the new City Hall, where I actually thought the convention center should go. And then there was some room to the north of it, but that couldn't be held long enough because of flood dollar restrictions, so that had to be developed. So there was really, at that time, no place downtown. But we did that. We looked at one out by West Acres. We looked at a greenfield spot along Veterans Boulevard. So that study got done, and then again, nothing happened. Some people in town, including chamber executives, suggested we needed another study, at which point I'm like, how long are you going to study this? We know what we need, and we know what's out there. And we'd already spent like $50,000 to $100,000 between us and the Fargo Dome on studies. So it just kind of stalled. So that's kind of where it's been at until a year or so ago. I mean, I could give you the ongoing history. Someone else suggested back in 2 years ago, this was Shannon, I think, the people who own Bruhala. Well, first of all, back that up. We had a vote in December of 2023, finally, to fund renovations of the Fargo Dome with a 1/4-cent sales tax, and then also adding the 3% additional lodging tax, and that would have included renovating the dome and building the convention space onto the dome. Needed 60%, it got 52%. So then after that happened, I got in some conversations with our friends at Bruhala, and they were interested. So I can reveal this because this was public. We talked about it with all the city leaders. And Shannon and Joe Raso from the EDC invited them and us to come and present this proposal to the chamber and EDC board combined meeting. So that we did, and everyone was pretty interested. But at that point, someone brought up the idea, well, why don't we do an RFP so you don't have to pick a location, you let people pick. So that was the genesis of that, and that's what ultimately led to splitting the votes in November of 2024. And again, the 1/4-cent sales tax separately still needed 60%, but the 3% lodging tax, we found out, only needed 50% if it was separate from the Fargo Dome. So we did that. 52%, that passed. Unfortunately, the Fargo Dome renovation did not pass.
I see. Well, thank you for diving into that. I
Sorry,
know
it's a long-winded history, but if you know,
it helps. It
you
does
asked.
help give. I did ask, but it honestly does help have context to that because it's been on people's radar for a while because it's important. And so what I want to do after this next break, I want to bring Shannon and Kent into this and talk a little bit more about, the economics behind it, the why, and of course, Kent, your expertise too. I'm really curious about your passion behind this. So we'll jump back in right after this break. Welcome back. If you're just tuning in, Charley Johnson just gave us a really good history lesson on kind of how we got to where we are today in conversations and the project of the Fargo Convention Center. So that was a really good history lesson, Charley. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Sorry it got so long.
Oh, that's great. So what I want to do is, Shannon, I'm really curious about your perspective on this. And well, I know you have many perspectives. You're on the committee as well, the Convention Center committee, as are you, Kent. Mm-hmm. But I suppose from the chamber lens, why is it the time now that Fargo really needs to be, foot on the gas with this? What's the importance and what's the ripple effect that something like this does have on our community?
Yeah, it has a huge ripple effect. The reality of it is we have a region right now that is really prime for growth. We're seeing growth at 3 times the national average for people and workforce, right? We're one of the few net in migration communities and regions in the Midwest. And so we've got a lot of community initiatives that are working towards elevating our regional brand and being able to represent what does this dynamic region really look like when we have 9 $1 billion companies headquartered here. We have a dynamic downtown. We've got 5 higher education entities. We're the largest economic driver region in the North Dakota area, largest or fastest growing county in North Dakota, fastest growing county, Clay County in Minnesota, outside of the metro region. So there's a lot of things that are primed and positioned for us that now is the time to capitalize on an opportunity like this, not to mention other amenities in the community that are leaning in towards this. So we are looking for the massive transformation and renovation of our airport, which will tie right into this. So doubling the size of the gate, or doubling the gates at the airport. We just had an airport roundtable yesterday with about 35 business leaders on what are they looking for as it relates to air service and amenities. That ties all into when you're trying to attract conventions here, that ease of air travel will be, although many of those are also drivable, right? Our Charley can speak to this. Our targets will be, Midwest drivable type of targets, but you never know. The other component of this is we have amenities like the new sports complex,
Yes.
Which is bringing in many more opportunities to host local sports. And what happens is all of this turns into kind of a layering effect that people build awareness around what's offered here, including that opportunity for convention space. So many times as people are visiting the area, that's where they identify, this is where I could live, this is where I could bring a convention, this is where I could bring a sporting event. Those are the types of things that happen. So that it's really an important and critical time. And I think that we're really lucky that we have a community that sees opportunity and wants to seize that opportunity. And they did so when they went to the ballot box and voted in favor of this project. So.
Well, thank you for that. And Kent, what I want to ask you, well, first of all, I think it would be good if you maybe gave your elevator pitch about what Livewire is, because I mean, you're a local celebrity, so I think everybody knows, but just to be sure, because I just want to know
Depends on who you ask.
Yeah. So people know your perspective and angle of attack. So if you could give us a rundown on Livewire, then I'm really curious about your perspective that you're bringing to the committee and why you're so passionate about this project.
Definitely. Yeah, Livewire is a local live event production company, and so we provide audio, video, lighting, staging, scenery, that type of thing for corporate events, conferences, theatrical events, nonprofit galas, community events, such as the Chamber, of course, which we love working with you guys all the time. Thank you so much for having us, by the way. And so what a lot of folks might not know about Livewire is that we actually work on a national basis as well, and very frequently. In fact, almost every week we've got a team on the road. It might be a small team, it might be a large team, working in different corners of the country. For example, I just got back from Santa Fe, New Mexico recently on a recent conference that we produced there. So we're frequently working in different types of venues, of course, regionally and throughout the country. And that might be, in many cases, convention centers, in some cases, hotel ballrooms, in other cases, other types of venues, of course. But we've seen a really healthy number of the convention centers of the same similar size, I would say, to what we're talking about here in Fargo-Moorhead. And we've seen the tremendous impact of those convention centers as well in those communities and in those regions too. So for my part, as an event production guy, if you will, I'm thinking about this and approaching it really from the perspective of I want to do this right the first time. I want to make sure we check all the right boxes. We have all the right amenities, all the right traffic flow, all the right things that an event planner is looking for when planning a convention that might come to Fargo-Moorhead. Of course, the other side of this, and Shannon hit the nail on the head in terms of growth in the community and in the region, most of our local and regional events are also seeing really substantial growth right now. Even if I think about, nonprofit entities, like, for example, we work with Ronald McDonald House and many others for that matter, and we're really grateful for those partnerships as well. All of those different clients of ours are seeing substantial growth in terms of their audiences. And right now, our local ballroom-style venues are kind of capping out at that 800 to 1,000 mark at highest. Yep. That's a very tough number to get to on its own in many of those venues, too. So there's a need here on a local basis as well as a regional basis. And again, really more than anything, when I first approached Charley about this and the mayor as well about the potential for participating in some way, my one and only perspective on this is that I just really want to make sure we get a quality venue. It would be easy enough to build a big, concrete building, tall ceilings, maybe some nice power in the loading.
A Quonset hut.
Yeah, right. It'd be easy enough to do that and call it a convention center, and we would host all sorts of different conventions, meetings, and I'm sure it would be fine. But we don't want fine. We want to make sure that this is a world-class facility. We want to be able to draw in great conferences from around the country, potentially around the world. International is a great opportunity, of course, with our agriculture focus in this area. So I think there's lots of great potential in that way. And again, just want to see a quality venue above all else. So.
Well, that was a good segue bringing up amenities. Charley, can you unpack a little bit what we're looking for in this RFP? And if you want to explain that process a little bit too. But I know there's a whole series of guidelines, obviously.
Well, the committee started meeting in early February, and we spent quite a bit of time listening to people who operate other convention centers around the region, including paying a visit to St. Cloud and Rochester with the bulk of the committee, which was very helpful. Kent has worked in all those places. He was along. He had the right questions to ask, so that was very eye-opening to everyone. We won't build anything as big as Rochester. It might not even be quite as big as St. Cloud to begin with, but we got some really good ideas and suggestions from them about things they would do over again differently and things they did that were right. So the RFP that we came up with has some basic suggested minimums in it. Just went out a couple of weeks ago, January 11th, I think it became live. June 11th, I'm sorry, June 11th, and the first phase of that is due on August 7th. So what we're asking for in our suggested minimums in the first phase is 50,000 square feet of ballroom/exhibit space. It could be one big room dividable, or they might lay it out differently than that. But that's for the RFP responders to tell us. We need another minimum of 8,800 about square feet and that's kind of a minimum in my book for what we call breakout spaces, other smaller meeting rooms that again dividable. Where you're looking for a kitchen that's at least 6,000 square feet based on input we got from caterers around the community who were very active, and one of them actually went on the trip with us even though he was not on the committee. It was very helpful. We have, and then we're looking for 10,000 square feet approximately of pre-function space, registration, cocktail party, that kind of thing, and then another 10,000 square feet at least of storage. And the other suggested minimum is it needs to be either attached to an existing hotel or have a plan to attach a hotel to it in the process as it comes up. So those are the basic minimums we're looking for. That would be, if we can get something close to that size, we believe it will help us attract not any gigantic conventions, but it'll help us get that exhibit and ballroom space component, general session ballroom space, breakout space component. And it will help us attract more regional business. We also would very much like it to be, if possible, in a place where it could be expanded down the road.
Yeah.
So that's kind of basically those are the nuts and bolts of the RFP.
So the committee has a few things to think about. We have about 60 seconds until our next break, and we can start this response. We'll see if we get it all in. I'm curious. Okay, so you get these RFPs sent back to you. Then what? What does the committee then do?
Well, the committee is on hiatus right now.
Yep.
Kent was just saying he doesn't know what to do with his Friday afternoon. Shannon said she does.
I'm
She's got it
just
covered.
fine.
I think most of us have it covered, Kent, so whatever. But we're on hiatus until they have 30 days to submit questions for the city or the committee to answer. So at the end, that would be July 11th. So I think on the 18th, we're going to meet just to see what kind of questions came to be. And then we'll wait until August 7th until the proposals come in, the first phase of proposals. Then after August 7th, then the meetings will start again in earnest as we try to, depending on how many we get, we'll try to narrow it down.
Yep.
And then send back in the second phase for much more detail, both financial and construction and all that kind of stuff, and see if we can see what comes back from however many we decide to narrow it down to.
Sure. Okay. Well, I have one more follow-up question to that, but we have to get to the news quick.
Okay.
So we'll do that. We'll come back. I have one more question, then we'll keep chatting about this. This is great. We'll be back. Welcome back. We were just wrapping up a conversation about the Convention Center Committee and their role in this, and it's a big job. And I'm curious, and this could be a question for any of you, since you're all on the committee in some way, shape, or form. Can you talk to me a little bit about who else serves on? Because I was looking at the list on your website, Charlie, last night. It's a very diverse group. So if you could explain the dynamics there a little bit, and then I'm curious about, I suppose, the final steps about you guys going to the City Commission with the recommendation. If you can hit the details on that, that would be good.
Well, I'm on the committee, which is fine, thank you. Mallory Ackerman, our Director of Convention Sales at Visit Fargo-Moorhead, is on. One of our board members is a member, but she represents the hotel industry, Claire Hughes, who manages the Clubhouse Inn and Suites in Fargo. So she brought the hotel perspective. Excuse me. Obviously, we have Kent, who is there for his understanding of how these situations work. We have, I hope I'm going to remember everybody's name, Caitlin Balstead, who is an association manager and works with conferences. So she's been great to have on there. Emma McIntyre. Hey, thank you. He has a list. Emma McIntyre from Folkways. They do a lot of events and could be perceived as ended up doing something with us. Taylor Snelling, representing the restaurant community, owner of Mezzaluna downtown. Let's see, who I got? Joe Raso from EDC, Shannon from the Chamber, Kent, all 5 city commissioners. We thought there'd just be one, but the commission decided they all wanted to be on there, and 3 of them have been very regular in their attendance.
Good.
So that's been good. And so that's, there are 14 members altogether. Yeah.
So that's that's a great group. That should give anybody listening a sense of calm to know that you have all these voices and areas of expertise and perspectives on this committee. That's great.
I think, let me add one thing too. What we also have, Charlie really did a fabulous job of making sure that we had other thought leaders providing insight during the committee meetings and during the planning. So that was everything from other event planning individuals, other convention center. We actually looked at the Fox Cities Convention Center and the Overland Park, Kansas Convention Center, where their leadership came on and talked to us and kind of gave us if you had it to do all over again, what would you do differently? So getting those varied perspectives from thought leadership across the country has been really impactful as well. I think what the diversity that the committee members bring to the table, those diverse perspectives, has just made it a more well-rounded practice, and it has made our matrix that we have set for the weighting scale of how we're going to weight projects to be much more robust. And so that part's been very influential. So yeah, I would say that the community should be really happy with the fact that it's been very intentional on the strategy of putting this all together.
Because did I hear somebody wanted?
No, that's what I was going to say. Thanks, Shannon. I feel like it has worked out that well, and we also had other, not just Caitlin on there, but we had other meeting planners, both regionally and locally, come and talk to us too about things they liked about various places they've been and things they don't like.
Yeah, well, those are important questions. Okay, I just want to make sure I get this right. So the committee, you have this matrix, you have all of these different ways to score, and this is I'm assuming it's very robust. You have it with you? Yeah, there it is. Yeah. And so then your job is I just want to make sure it's clear. You guys take this to the city commission to make your recommendations, right? It's not Charlie just chooses right. Okay.
The committee will make a recommendation. Ultimately, the city commission will make the final decision because they're the leaders. They're all on the committee. So we would hope that if we bring a recommendation to them, they'll have had some input already, but then there'll be room for some public input, of course, too, at that point. So So yeah, we'll ultimately make a recommendation sometime, hopefully before the end of the year or shortly thereafter.
And I think what's important to note is that there are those non-negotiables, the requirements. There are others, though, that are that we do have a rating scale to say if you are doing this, how does that rate into that? And so that also helps. And then when it is brought to, as Charlie mentioned, the intent is to, depending upon how many RFPs come in, how many projects come in, to narrow that down in this first phase, bring that to the City Commission, and then have that be kind of verified and approved, and then go back to those handful, whether it's 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever that might be, as the finalists, to then go into phase 2, where there will be an actual opportunity to see presentations where we can hear and see more of the renderings, their idea of this, because it's not just the convention center. This truly will be an economic engine for us and will have significant economic impact. So it will spur additional economic development. So where that and what that all looks like is going to be really important to have those developers share that insight with us as well.
Yeah. And without going into too much detail, that's kind of the way the weighting system played out. We broke it down. We had 4 categories. We narrowed it down to 3 because there was some redundancy. And one of the 3 categories gets 40%. The other 2 get 30% total. And then there are different categories within them. I'll spare you that detail. But site consideration is the block that will get 40% of the concern, which is very important. Where's it going to be? That's a big issue.
Yeah. Well, Shannon, I'm glad you brought up this being an economic engine. Can we stay on that for a second? So I think about Taylor Snelling representing, that small business, and he's a restaurant owner, and we have so many of those similar individuals, that similar persona. So can you maybe explain, this could be a chamber perspective too, because we represent, what is it, about maybe 72% small business is our membership. So what is that impact, that positive impact that something like this could have on small businesses just like Taylor's?
Sure.
Like almost that secondary impact.
Sure. And so there's kind of 3 ways to look at it. There's direct impact, indirect impact, and then induced impact. So the direct impact is that what is directly happening when you have a convention here. So who's being employed, what jobs are directly associated with hosting the actual event, right? Then when you look at indirect and induced, it's all of that discretionary dollars that are circled around through a community. So you think about when you come for a convention, you're coming for hotel rooms, you're coming for restaurants, entertainment, shopping, so the retail component of that, those pieces. But then you also think about, yes, those are indirect spendings. Then the induced piece of this is look at all of the people that are employed in these types of organizations that have livelihoods because of events like this and that. And so there's there's a multiplier effect when you're able to bring outside dollars into a community. And that's what this is really focusing on, is how do we capitalize on additional outside dollars to drive our regional economy.
That's very good. Well done. Thank you. Yes, that's exactly right. And that's where location becomes important. Because if you build it somewhere where all of those things exist, it will, of course, increase the business around them and compress that business outside. If you build it somewhere where there isn't a lot of business around it, then you would look in terms of what could be developed around it. And I think we'll get proposals in various categories on that scale from one to the other. So that's one of the things that you'll be looking at in the site consideration. What's there now, and what's the potential for additional development?
When we get to that stage of people giving their presentations, I'm assuming the public is going to be able to tune in on this? Like, even I'm interested to see what some people are going to bring forward in that later stage.
Yeah, 100% transparent. When Commissioner Pepcorn said he wanted to have all 5 commissioners on, he said he wanted to make sure it was open. And we said, well, it will be, but this will be great. We are 100% open on this. It's ultimately people will know what ones are being considered. And all our meetings are public because all the commissioners are on them.
Yep. So. Well, I know I did use one of my Friday afternoons to tune into
good for you.
Your committee meetings. Shannon, you brought up, I'm just thinking about revenues that are going to come into to our region in the future when this is done. And this is maybe boring for you, Charlie, but can you just give a high level of how this is funded? Can you explain the lodging tax? Because I know that's not necessarily knowledge that everybody has right out of the gates.
I'll try to be shorter than the history. I think the reason we were able to be successful with this is the lodging tax, the 3% additional on top of the existing 3%, which funds Visit Fargo-Moorhead.
Yep.
And we get it from all 3 cities. So this additional 3% is only in Fargo because it's a Fargo project. So it's almost 100% paid by visitors. So this is kind of a genius way to fund promotion of the community and a facility that will bring more people in. So where the visitors themselves essentially pay for it. You know, maybe you bring grandma in for Thanksgiving and you don't want her at your house, so you put her in a hotel. So maybe you pay a little bit of the tax, but 95+% of this tax is paid by visitors. So that's the function. And that's just the way it works. And so we need to use what we get for the proceeds of that to build the public part of what we intend to be a public-private partnership with a hotel.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, we're going to hit our last break, then we're going to get into our last segment. So we'll be right back. Welcome back. We're in our last segment of the show. And this, you know, what's hard for us here is when we're on commercial break, that doesn't mean we stop chatting. And so we were talking, and Kent, you had an amazing perspective because obviously these bidders are going to have location built in to what they send you guys back. But can you kind of explain to the listeners what you were saying about the location and I suppose the advantage that our region does have?
Sure, absolutely. I think there's really excellent, pros and cons to each potential location that has been brought up, even just in passing conversations, as this has been brought up over a number of years. Charlie, to your point, right? Since this has first been discussed since 1985, was it? So I think there's a number of great potential locations throughout our communities for a convention center. However, I think we have one massive advantage in Fargo-Moorhead, West Fargo, in that really, you can be on the other side of town in 20 minutes or less, barring road construction. We won't talk about that piece. But that in mind, we're producing conventions and conferences all over the country, as I mentioned earlier. And we work in some convention centers, and not to name names, Des Moines, as you mentioned earlier, is one of those, of course, and many other, maybe more downtown-centric, maybe more outskirts, that type of thing, right? We've seen all flavors and a number of pros and cons around that. But there again, as a conference attendee, if you think about yourself attending a convention, a conference, what have you, visiting a city, more than likely you're going to be doing a little bit of Googling, figuring out what the things you want to check out. For myself, that's, I'm going to go check out this brewery over here or, maybe the zoo or something like that. And in the case of Fargo-Moorhead, West Fargo, we have almost immediate access to any one of those things in a very short amount of time. At a very low cost, if you have to take an Uber or Lyft or otherwise public transit, it's easy to make that happen, right, as a conference attendee. So yes, location is absolutely an important part of this conversation. At the same time, I think no matter what location is picked, the entirety of our community and our communities, in our region will absolutely benefit in that way.
Yeah, it'll be a plus for the whole metro, ultimately. If it's not, we messed up big time. So.
Yep. Well, that's great.
Then it's Charlie's fault.
Is it always Charlie's fault? That's just my knee-jerk reaction.
It could be, yeah.
But to your point, Shannon, because you brought up the airport earlier in the show, same thing with the airport expansion. I mean, yes, it's in Fargo, but that is a major benefit to even outside of Moorhead, even outside of West Fargo. I mean, it is going to impact everything and everybody positively.
And just from a logistics perspective, if nothing else, as I think about that from the event vendor side of this, right? Easy in, easy out, interstates, airport, whole 9 yards. I mean, this is an easy, centralized location, low cost of doing business, low cost to produce.
Yeah, it's helpful to be at the intersection of two major interstates. And seriously, I mean, I live in southeast Moorhead. I'm 4 miles from downtown Sabin. And I'm as far from the airport as you can get, basically, and it takes me less than 20 minutes to get to the airport.
It's not bad. And you're not speeding, are you? That's
never.
Good.
And
as far as you know.
And the reality of it is that accessibility and ease is really one of the reasons why you're seeing mid-sized markets like ours continuing to see the growth that we are. People are so frustrated with traffic and congestion. Absolutely. And we've got great other aspects like the safety of our area and all of that. So, but that just speaks a little bit to that piece of it where when you're planning, intentionally putting in amenities and opportunities for growth like the convention center will be, it will continue to allow us to be a successful region now and into the future.
All right, Charlie, let's get down to brass tacks here. How much do we have to spend on we as in our community, as in what's what's the top dollar amount?
Well, the city finance department, Susan Thompson, got Baker Tilly, who is one of their finance companies, one they use the most. So they ran a pro forma on us about what based on current interest rates and what kind of money we think what the lodging tax is currently raising. They were very conservative. In fact, they only went 20 years, even though it's a 25-year thing. And they said somewhere between $37 and $42 million, I think, for construction. So I'm quite confident that it'll be somewhere between 40 and 45 million total, and that's with the idea of saving out probably up to $500,000 a year out of the new tax, the new lodging tax, to cover operating subsidies. Because yes, it will not make money, certainly not in the first years. If it ever broke even, it would be great. But the whole idea is what Shannon was talking about. It's you bring money into the community and it flows through the community in other ways.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
that's a really important part that people need to realize is that convention centers across the country do not themselves make money. It is the fact that they are the economic driver for making money to the rest of the region. So some do, but very, very, it's much more likely that that's not the case.
It's the same theory behind, you mentioned sports, why we at Visit Fargo-Moorhead, we have a capital fund and we've given hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars to different facilities. And just in the 13 years I've been here, almost more than $7 million we've paid out, including a lot of sporting facilities because they bring people in big groups to the community. Well, the same thing is true if we get a convention center. It'll bring people to the community.
And when is this proposed to be done? Is this up to the developers, or is there a kind of a stop date that you guys are suggesting? Or
Well, if no project is picked by 2028, the tax goes away. The tax doesn't kick in until we pick a project. I'm not worried about that. We're going to find a project. So that's when the tax will first kick in. Right now, that 3% additional hasn't taken place yet. If I would hope that sometime late 25, early 26, we will have a project picked out and approved by the commission. And then, of course, I would anticipate 6 to 12 months of just prep work. Maybe it could be in the ground by the spring of 26. And then whatever the build length is on it, 18 months at least, I'm sure.
yeah, well, that'll be here before you know it. That's not.
Well, that's true.
That's
you
not
know,
bad.
as a young man, I'm glad you appreciate how fast time goes. As an old man, I can tell you it's the blink of an eye. So I'm glad you have that perspective, Tyler. That's good.
Yep, thank you. I try to remain optimistic. Oh, Kent, I had a question for you. It just left my brain. I'll see if it can come back to me in the next 3 minutes here.
On the cost of it thing, this is the one thing that keeps me up at night.
Oh,
I hope that the 40 million plus is enough to build what we want.
Yes.
And I can't wait to see what gets proposed because, costs go up constantly and the economy's in flux. So we don't really know exactly what we're going to be able to build. The developers are going to tell us what that will buy us.
The one thing I'm really excited for on the heels of that, too, is potential for expandability. That's also a component in our rating system that we built out on this, and that's a really key component as I think about this going forward. I mean, tied to the growth of our community and our region, we absolutely have to have expandability in this in some way in terms of building out more meeting space, trade show space, what have you. So, to your point, I mean, we'll build what we can afford. Absolutely.
That's right.
We're not going to go, far and beyond that in any sort of way. We can't. But the component for expandability is going to be critically important as we think about this and review these RFPs.
Absolutely.
so here's my last. Oh, go ahead,
And
Shannon.
that's the part that would be, we as committee members are making sure we're trying to be good stewards of the taxpayer dollars, and that we are planning for future growth, because that we don't see that slowing down anytime
Oh yeah,
soon
it's
in our
coming
region.
for sure.
So.
Yeah, for sure.
So what do you guys think? I try to work into every episode is some sort of call to action for chamber members and community members listening. And maybe there's not one, but is there something that business leaders can do or should do just to keep engagement up? Or is there any ask that we have of anybody? Is it just to, keep tabs on Charley's website, what's going on? Or what would you say?
I think one of the things is, now that the RFP is out there, is really making sure that people are aware of that,
Right.
and that we're getting good responses. It would be fabulous. The more opportunities we have, the better. I think then during the selection process, having the community just stay aware of what's going on, and also have a little bit of grace, right? The reality of it is, you may have a very strong feeling about where you want this, but we don't want our personal feelings, our personal biases to overshadow the overall opportunity that the region has with this. And so that's the other thing. I will guarantee you that whatever project is selected is not going to fit check everybody's
sure.
boxes, right?
Yep.
It's not going to be their top choice. It's not even going to be the top choice of some of the committee members, I'll guarantee it. But that's a piece that I think is going to be really important to keep that perspective in mind.
Yeah, because we'll get good projects. I think we'll get multiple good proposals, and it will be a hard decision.
Well, and it's about the future, too. I just had that thought when I was downtown watching Mayor Mahoney open up that time capsule last week, and he read a letter from the mayor from 1975, and just that forward thinking, and it was kind of uncanny to just have a letter read to you from 50 years ago, but it really is like what that mayor was doing back then. It's much greater than himself, the community leaders at their time. It's about the future. And so I like that perspective, Shannon, that you brought to the table.
That was Mayor Henches, probably? Yeah, I think it was.
You're testing me. It must have been.
Yeah.
But
I covered that campaign, yeah.
all right, you guys, that hour flew by. We're out of time, but thank each and every one of you so much for being on. I learned a lot today.
Thank
I hope
you.
everybody
Thanks
else
for having
did.
us, yeah.
And we'll be here next week.